My sister slept with my husband, got pregnant, and now my parents say I'm heartless for refusing to help her after he threw her out. I never thought my life could unravel like this. My sister, 24F, and I, 26F, had always been so close. Growing up, she was my confidant, my rock. At 18, she moved out with me, and we started a new chapter together, leaving our parents behind. We were inseparable, two halves of the same whole. 2 years later, I met the man I thought would be my life partner. My soon-to-be ex-husband was charming, supportive, and everything I thought I wanted. We got married, and though our lives changed, my sister remained a constant. She was always there for dinners, game nights, and lazy Sundays. It felt like the perfect balance. Then came the revelation that shattered everything. A few months ago, my sister told me she was expecting. I was thrilled for her until she shared who the father was. It was my husband. I felt like the ground beneath me disappeared. My marriage crumbled in an instant, and the bond with my sister fractured irreparably. The betrayal was overwhelming, and I couldn't look at her the same way. I told her, firmly but honestly, that I couldn't be a part of her life anymore. She moved in with him, and I closed that chapter of my life, or so I thought. Fast forward to after the baby's arrival. My ex decided he no longer wanted her living with him. She called our parents from the hospital, saying she had nowhere to go. They called me, desperate for my help. My sister was pleading for support, but I stood my ground. I wasn't ready to forgive or forget. I told my parents, as calmly as I could manage, that it wasn't my responsibility. She'd made her choices, and now she had to face them. They were furious. My parents accused me of being cold and unfeeling, insisting I had the space and resources to help. They didn't understand how deeply I'd been hurt. I wasn't just betrayed, my trust, my marriage, and my relationship with my sister were all destroyed. How could they expect me to just move past that? In the end, my sister found a spot at a shelter for single parents. I blocked her calls and messages because I knew she wouldn't stop trying to reach me. My parents don't know that part, but they've made it clear they think I'm a terrible person for cutting her off completely. The last time they called, I finally lost my composure. They insisted I was abandoning her and the baby, my own family. I told them, in no uncertain terms, how deeply I'd been hurt and how her choices had left me no room to support her now. I may have said something cutting that I regret, but the pain was just too fresh to filter my words. Now I'm left wondering if I'm in the wrong. Should I have set aside my feelings to help her? Or is it fair to protect my boundaries after what she did? Maybe I'll never know, but for now, this is the only way I know how to cope. Update 1. When I told my parents I was done with my sister, I meant it. But apparently, they didn't. The past few weeks have been exhausting because they refuse to accept my decision. They're still trying to convince me to help her out, as if the betrayal never happened. Every time they call, it's the same thing: guilt trips, lectures about family loyalty, and endless pleading for me to step up. They act like I'm the one who did something wrong. My sister's choices aren't my responsibility, but no one seems to get that. After blocking her, I figured things would quiet down, but I underestimated how far my parents would go to get me involved. They started dropping hints that they'd come to visit me if I didn't answer their calls, and I honestly wouldn't put it past them. I had to remind them that I live alone now, and they aren't entitled to show up uninvited just because they're upset. They didn't take that well. My mom said I was being cruel by abandoning my sister during her time of need, and I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Wasn't it cruel of her to betray me in the first place? But when I pointed that out, they accused me of holding a grudge and letting my anger cloud my judgment. It's not about anger anymore. It's about boundaries and self-respect. I spent so much time trying to process what happened and rebuild my life after my marriage fell apart. I don't owe anyone anything, least of all someone who caused so much pain. But according to my parents, I'm supposed to set all of that aside because family is everything. If family is so important, maybe they should be asking her why she destroyed mine in the first place. Last week, they tried a different approach. My dad called and started reminiscing about our childhood, reminding me of all the times my sister and I were there for each other. He told me stories about how I used to protect her from bullies and how she'd sneak me candy when we were grounded. It was a nice trip down memory lane until he ruined it by saying, "That's the kind of love you don't just throw away over a mistake." A mistake. That's what they're calling it now. I couldn't hold back. I told him that sleeping with my husband wasn't a mistake, it was a decision, and a selfish one at that. I told him that downplaying her actions only made things worse because it showed they weren't taking my feelings seriously. He got quiet after that, but instead of apologizing, he handed the phone to my mom, who went right back to insisting I needed to help my sister. I hung up. A few days later, my cousin called me out of the blue. We aren't super close, so it was a bit weird, but she said she'd heard about the situation and wanted to check in on me. Apparently, my parents have been talking about me to anyone who will listen, painting me as the stubborn one who's refusing to forgive her poor, struggling sister. My cousin said she didn't want to take sides but thought I might regret cutting my sister off completely. This is where I started to lose it. First my parents, now extended family? How is it that everyone's so worried about her and the baby, but no one seems to care about the person she betrayed? It feels like I've been erased from my own story, like my pain is less important because I'm not the one crying in a shelter. I asked my cousin if she knew the whole story, and when she hesitated, I realized she didn't. She only knew the sanitized version my parents told her, that my sister made a mistake and I refused to forgive her. So, I gave her the unfiltered truth. I told her everything about how I found out, how I ended my marriage, and how my sister's betrayal blindsided me. By the time I was done, she was speechless. She admitted that she didn't realize how bad it was, and while she didn't outright say my parents were wrong, she did say she understood why I felt the way I did. It was nice to finally have someone acknowledge my side of things, even if it didn't change anything. But then she said something that stuck with me. She asked, "What's your end game here?" At first, I didn't know what to say. I hadn't really thought about it like that. My goal has always been to protect myself and set boundaries, but I guess I never considered what that would look like in the long run. Am I planning to never speak to my sister again? To never meet her child? To cut my parents off if they keep pushing me? I don't know. It's hard to think about the future when the present is still so messy. But her question made me realize I need to figure it out sooner rather than later. For now, I'm holding my ground. My parents can call me names, my sister can keep trying to reach out, and the rest of the family can judge me all they want. I've been through enough, and I'm not going to let anyone guilt me into sacrificing my peace of mind. Maybe one day things will change, but right now, this is what I need to heal. That said, part of me wonders if I'm being too stubborn. What if I'm making things worse for myself in the long run? What if I wake up one day and regret cutting her off? I don't think I will, but the doubt is there, lingering in the back of my mind. I know I need time, but time doesn't seem to be on my side. Every day feels like a new battle, and I'm tired. I just want this to be over, but I don't know if it ever will be. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and honestly, things have only gotten messier. My parents are relentless. They're determined to make me the villain of this story, constantly pushing me to reconsider my stance. If it's not phone calls, it's long texts about forgiveness and family values. At this point, it feels less like they're trying to help my sister and more like they're trying to ease their own guilt for not being able to fix things themselves. Last week, my mom sent me a long message outlining everything my sister is going through. Apparently, the shelter isn't great, shocking, right? And she's struggling to manage the baby on her own. She's also dealing with the custody battle with my ex, who, from what I've heard, is being as manipulative as ever. My mom said my sister is emotionally shattered and needs her big sister now more than ever. I sat there reading it, and all I could think was, where was my sister when I needed her? She wasn't thinking about me when she betrayed me. She wasn't there for me when my marriage fell apart. She was too busy living her life with my husband. And now I'm supposed to swoop in and save her? It doesn't work like that. But here's the thing, I don't hate her. I know it might sound like I do, but I don't. I'm just done. I'm done being the person who puts herself last. For years, I prioritized other people's happiness over my own, and look where it got me. Betrayed, alone, and dealing with a mountain of emotional baggage. I can't go back to being that person. That said, it's not like cutting her off hasn't been hard. There are moments when I miss her. We had so many good memories together, and sometimes it feels like I lost more than just a sister. I lost my history, my childhood, a part of myself. It's a weird kind of grief, mourning someone who's still alive. My parents keep bringing up the baby, like that's supposed to change my mind. They act like my refusal to engage with my sister means I'm also rejecting an innocent child. It's not that simple. I didn't ask for any of this, and I shouldn't have to compromise my boundaries just because there's a baby involved. Speaking of the baby, my ex has been ramping up his efforts to get full custody. I'm not sure if it's because he actually wants to be a dad or if he just wants to hurt my sister. Knowing him, it's probably both. My parents tried to rope me into their drama by asking if I'd testify on my sister's behalf. I said no, obviously. I don't want anything to do with him or their custody battle. They made their bed, they can lie in it. Still, the thought of him getting full custody makes me uneasy. Not because I care about him or my sister, but because I don't trust him to be a good father. He's manipulative, controlling, and selfish, traits that don't exactly scream responsible parent. The idea of that poor baby growing up under his influence makes my stomach turn, but what can I do? It's not my fight. In the meantime, my parents are doubling down on their attempts to guilt me. They've started sending me pictures of my sister and the baby, as if that's going to magically change my mind. One photo was of my sister holding the baby, looking completely exhausted, and the caption read, "She's doing her best." Another was just the baby sleeping, with a message that said, "Look at this sweet face. He doesn't deserve this." I didn't respond. I didn't even open the messages after that. It's like they're trying to manipulate me into feeling responsible for a situation I had no part in creating. Recently, a mutual friend reached out. She said she'd heard about the situation through the grapevine and wanted to check in. At first, I thought she was going to lecture me, but instead, she just listened. She didn't try to tell me what to do or guilt me into reconciling. She let me vent, and it was such a relief to finally talk to someone who wasn't trying to fix things. She did ask me one question, though, that caught me off guard. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I didn't know how to answer. Forgiveness feels so far away, like something I might consider in another lifetime. Right now, I'm too focused on protecting myself to think about offering her forgiveness. But maybe one day? I don't know. For now, I'm trying to focus on moving forward. I started therapy, which has been helpful, though it's also been hard. My therapist pointed out that I have a tendency to carry guilt that doesn't belong to me, which is something I need to work on. She also said it's okay to prioritize my own healing, even if it means setting boundaries that other people don't like. That was reassuring to hear, especially since my parents keep acting like my boundaries are some kind of personal attack. In the quiet moments, when the chaos dies down, I sometimes wonder what my sister is thinking. Does she regret what she did? Does she miss me? Or is she just angry that I'm not helping her? I'll probably never know, and maybe that's for the best. At the end of the day, I'm still standing by my decision. It's not easy, and it's definitely not fun, but it feels like the right thing to do. For the first time in a long time, I'm putting myself first, and I'm not going to apologize for that. That doesn't mean the doubt doesn't creep in, though. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being too harsh, if I'll look back on this years from now and wish I'd handled things differently. But then I remember how much it hurt to find out what she and my ex did, and all the guilt and second guessing fades away. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this: I deserve peace, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me again.